The more and more I look John Calipari, the more I think in this day and age, he has all the leverage till he's 90 years old if he wants, because he's going to bring in guys that are exciting. They might up and win one. And when I say leverage, I'm not talking about at Kentucky. They may get sick of it. They may want to go after somebody else. But who could you go hire right now that's better than John Calipari? He's free throws, one missed free throw away by Derrick Rose of winning 2 championships, one at Memphis, which isn't easy to do. The amount of talent he's brought into Kentucky, and he has won a championship. This would be a way different conversation, Caleb, if we were talking about he hadn't won even one, okay? If we're sitting at 0, but he has won one. So it's difficult. It would be really difficult for me as a Kentucky administrator to say, hey, I think we'll replace this John Calipari guy who gets all this fun talent each and every year. But Kentucky's a different fan base. How would you put yourself in that position if you're Mitch Barnhart, the athletic director there?
Yeah, that's a tough situation to be in, more so than anything, because I think college basketball, the only thing that makes a job a better job is the pay. Because quite honestly, I don't think you're right. Calipari could go anywhere and he could recruit 5-star talent and they'll come there and he'll be as good as he is at Kentucky. I don't think that it's not like college football. It's not like college football where you'd rather coach at Alabama, Georgia, or LSU, where you can just wake up and get a top 5 recruiting class because there's so much talent in the area. It doesn't really matter where the talent is in college basketball because it's so much more national. I really think the Blue Bloods thing is irrelevant in college basketball, if I'm going to be honest with you. I think it's much more about the coaches. And so you're right. If you fire John Calipari, what great coach would leave the situation they're in to go to Kentucky unless Kentucky just unloads a dump truck of cash that the other school can't compete with?
Well, and everybody can compete with it now because football, to spend in line with the elite programs, you're talking about a coach of 10 million, you're talking about NIL money, you're talking about having facilities. So if you're just school U in wherever and you want to build up a fantastic football program, you're going to have to throw around 9 digits. You're going to have to throw around the hundreds of millions of dollars. For basketball, you can hire a great coach. You can have facilities built. Tennessee did this. They were already a strong program beforehand, but they built the Pratt Pavilion, so there wasn't any comparison from their facilities and other schools. They went ahead and got that stuff done. And, you're investing 15, 20 million extra than you were. I look at Gonzaga. I mean, that is not a mid-major anymore. And when are they considered a blue blood? I mean, at what point, Caleb, if we're doing this show in 10 years, are they a blue blood?
You would think. I mean, I guess because they kind of remind me of the Villanova of the West, and I think Villanova is effectively there with 2 national titles now from Jay Wright before he retired. And I agree. It's funny because it's 15 years ago, when John Calipari left Memphis to go to Kentucky. I know I've been on pretty good authority that FedEx and a bunch of boosters, just came together and tried to pull a dump truck of cash to keep John Calipari at Memphis. And I understand why. But Calipari was just allured to the status of Kentucky and just really couldn't say no to it. Nowadays, if the same thing, Penny Hardaway may not ever be on Calipari's level, but say he starts thriving at Memphis, I don't think he would. Why would he want to leave? And I don't think, why would Mark Few want to leave Gonzaga? You're right. Why would, Kansas is a blue blood, but I'm thinking of recent national champions or recent elite coaches. Why would Rick Barnes want to leave Tennessee? I guess if we're saying that. And why would Bruce Pearl want to leave Auburn outside of the fact that he's living in Auburn?
No, but you're right. I think that there may be 3 or 4 that would pull you away if you have a tie there. If North Carolina, because Rick Barnes has ties there, came calling, yeah, I could see that. But, Kansas, Duke, some of those other blue blood programs, if Calipari left Kentucky and they came calling, I just don't think that has the pull that it used to. I mean, it's kind of like, nobody knew what Tesla was 15 years ago. And now that's the cool car to drive. I think there's a bunch of cool cars to drive right now. And I think that Gonzaga is kind of like the Tesla, and there are going to be other of those programs that are going to crop up. And but at the end of the day, I think Tennessee is one of those top 20, 25 programs that has all the facilities. So, and there may be more. I'm more of a football guy, obviously, but there may be more. But right now, when you talk about the top programs that can spend money and have the exact facilities you want, golly, man. I mean, there's a lot of them. There are a lot of choices. Coaches have an awful lot of leverage, and coaches can ask for $10 million because you're not spending it on a massive indoor 100-yard facility. I mean, there's just it does not take as much money to be a real basketball school as it does football. So if I'm Kentucky, I'm being really, really careful because I don't know that you're ever going to have a run of success. Like when you think of the Leitners and those guys and Bobby Hurley, because they stayed around for 3 years and they were 4 years and they were prominent for 4 years. I don't know that you're ever going to have that or not. So I think it's a reload mentality, and Kentucky fans don't like that. They don't like to hear that, but that's life. Um, the chances that John Calipari is going to bring in 2 or 3 guys, because the perfect mix is have 2 or 3 guys that play 3 or 4 years and stars come in and come out, right? Theoretically, that's what you want. You have some leadership. That ain't the way he recruits. You think he's going to go take some no name from Selma, Kentucky, who might be a 4-year guy? That goes against everything he's done to this point in his career, Caleb.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, and to his credit, he's perfected the one and done part of college basketball. But you're right. He's going to be fully committed to it. It's almost the anti Rick Barnes. I've said for years that Rick Barnes should not recruit one and done players because Rick Barnes isn't as good at meshing one and done guys into his system. I think Tennessee's better when Rick Barnes recruits a bunch of 3 stars and they play together for 3 years because Rick Barnes develops talent so well. Calipari coaches one and dones really well, and he's got a great system. He coaches defense very well. He runs the dribble drive on offense, which for those of you who don't know, that's where every Kentucky offensive play is geared around the guard driving to the basket, and then they make the decision on whether or not to dish it to a big man or kick it out for a 3 or go for the layup. Every single play is a cut to the basket pretty much for the guards at Kentucky, and that's perfect for the players he's recruiting. And you're right, it's not going to change. And you're right. If you're Kentucky and you get rid of Calipari, let's just take Rick Barnes, for example. Okay, we're comparing programs. Kentucky is a blue blood, Tennessee's not. Fine. But if you're Rick Barnes, there's no nominal or marginal pay increase because Tennessee can afford to pay what Kentucky can afford to pay. You can win as much at Tennessee as you can at Kentucky, and you don't have the expectations that you would have at Tennessee. Rick Barnes, what he did at Tennessee, if he did that at Kentucky, he'd be on the hot seat right now. And I'm like, what coach wants that when they have just as good of an infrastructure and could get paid just as much to win where they're at?
Interesting. There are 4 or 5 programs out there right now that want to get serious about basketball because it's the easiest way to generate revenue that are hoping that John Calipari gets fired. That are just kind of sitting on the verge, and some may be in the SEC, some may be in the ACC or Big East, and they've realigned so much you don't know what to call them. But there is a program out there, and he can have the type of effect. Now, it's not going to be as public, but he can have the type of effect that Deion Sanders can have at Colorado. He can expect the big dogs to come rolling in immediately. By the way, I know you cover recruiting a bit. That mostly falls on Caleb Gyro. But have you noticed how many times that Colorado is on the list from some of these kids that you're bouncing around? I mean, I don't put a lot into a top 5 or 7 list, not announced. I'm just saying where they're listed on the individual recruiting services. But I don't think I saw Colorado for about 10 years, and I saw them 5 times this morning preparing for the show.
Yeah, I've noticed that too. And it's, I wonder if that's short-sighted by the kids because of the lore of Deion Sanders, because I think, but maybe it's not. But Dave, you and I know this. You probably know the history better than I do, but a lot of inner workings of Colorado football history that makes it just a bad job. It's made it a bad job in Division I for a long time.
You and I might differ. I think you can dip into Compton. there's a one-way flight there, and I think you can get kids out of Compton if their parents are smart enough to realize they need to get out of Compton. I go way back to the Bill McCartney days, and I think you can win there. Maybe that's a discussion we'll have.
Well, there was a, but there, I understand the Bill McCartney days, but I was saying the Gary Barton. There was a massive scandal, in the early 2000s with Colorado that we don't really need to fully delve into, but it was a bad one. It was a bad one, and I don't think they've ever recovered from that.
Oh, and then you had Rick Neuheisel was the coach there for a little bit, and he went to UCLA and got fired for betting $20,000 on. It's funny how much things have changed. Now I think coaches are probably allowed to pick up their phone during the game and make side bets. But he got fired. I don't know if you remember this, for actually being in a NCAA basketball pool.
I did not know that.
He bet $20,000 on a pool and kind of fibbed about it, which always makes it worse. Like the Nixon thing, just come clean. If you want to save your job, come clean. The most embarrassing part was when he became an analyst. I said, if you had a bet who will win the championship this upcoming season, he goes, Dave, you might not have heard, but I got in a little bit of trouble for betting, so I'm going to rephrase that for you. And I was like, that's not bad.
It's so funny because I'm very stringent on, I don't think you should ever be allowed to bet on the sport you're involved in, but you should be allowed to bet on any other sports you want. So that seems like an unfair scandal on Rick Neuheisel.